you are a real estate agent, you are in one of these 8 stages. And if you're feeling stuck right now, it's not because you're lazy. It's probably because you're working on the wrong things for the stage that you are currently in. Here's what I mean. Look, I believe it is the responsibility of every business owner to be able to articulate the number one thing that is holding them back. There's a book that's popular in grad school called The Goal, and it talks about the theory of constraints, which is about identifying what is the number one thing that if you got that one thing done, it would make everything else infinitely easier. That's what prioritization is, okay? Look, the thing about these 8 stages is that if you aren't where you want to be right now, the good news is that just means you haven't learned something yet, because behind each one of these stages is a principle. And it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're tall, short, how much money you got, okay? The principles don't discriminate. And at each level, the rules change. The skills change. What got you here won't get you there. The problem is nobody hands us the roadmap. So it kind of feels like you're flying with a blindfold on sometimes. And agents end up staying in the same stage for years at a time, sometimes their entire career. Not because they lack effort, but because they lack clarity. You know, after my business partners coached thousands of agents and built a $10 million coaching company, 64 employees, coaching the top 1% of 1% in every major NFL city across the country, we started noticing the same patterns over and over again. The same bottlenecks, the same ceilings, the same mistakes at each level. And so we mapped it out. Okay, in this video, I'm going to help you identify exactly which stage you are in, and more importantly, the one principal shift that moves you to the next level and every level beyond that. Okay, shoot, now that I think about it, you may end up saving this video and coming back to it from time to time, because what we realized after helping thousands of agents get unstuck is the problems aren't random. They repeat themselves at every stage. The same frustrations, the same, why does this feel harder than it should, right? And more importantly, the same moves that break you through those feelings, okay? Look, if you've made it this far in the video, what I can guarantee you is that you will have a light bulb moment before we finish up here. Because once we show agents the principle behind the stage that you are in, everything clicks. If you are here, this is the constraint. And this is the shift that gets you to the next level. Because here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Your business does not change until something you do daily changes. And you can't change anything until you have awareness. So as we go through this, your job is very simple. Don't judge it, okay? This isn't the time to go external and start judging. Get internal. Okay, diagnose it. Find yourself. Because once you know your stage, growth becomes almost mechanical. Okay, think of your business kind of like a video game. Every stage is just a level. And each level has a boss that you got to defeat and a skill you have to master, right? And well, if you keep trying to beat the level 4 boss using level 1 strategies, yeah, you're going to feel stuck no matter how hard you work. So truthfully, I don't think most agents have a work ethic problem. They're just playing the level they're on with the wrong strategy, which isn't going to make anybody excited to go to work every day, right? This should be fun. And so I encourage you to go through your stage and at least 2 more after that, so you can start to catch a vision of what needs to happen and who you need to become in order to make that happen. All right, so let's dive into stage 1. And you'll get the flow of the document as we go through the first couple of stages here. But they're primarily organized by transaction count, because it doesn't matter what your average price point is. It's the sheer number of transactions that determines if these are really accurate or not. Okay, so the first stage is the solopreneur. Welcome. You recently got your license, or maybe you're about to, and now you are the man in the arena. You got into this maybe because you wanted more freedom, no more ceiling on your income, more control over your life, and then reality hits. that real estate school doesn't teach us how to get clients, right? And so now you wake up every day and you don't actually know what you're supposed to be doing. You're closing less than 14 transactions a year, right? Maybe a handful, maybe zero. And what you quickly realize is if you stopped working for 30 days, everything would go quiet and your business would die. You feel lost. Nobody has shown you a clear path to predictably create opportunities. So you're just trying everything, man. Open houses, cold calls, posting recycled things on social media, asking your broker what to do next. Maybe you're buying some leads, right? It might feel like you're busy, but it doesn't really feel like you're building anything. Some months you might even be living paycheck to paycheck, which can be a scary feeling. And that's because you don't have any control. And that lack of control creates anxiety in some people because you do not know where your next deal is going to come from. And every new month, it feels like you're starting over from zero again. Now, some agents fly through this stage. And the truth is, it's usually because they have a background in sales or customer service, maybe. They already know how to talk to people and build trust. Some people need to learn that skill. And a great book for that is How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. But here's the part most people get wrong. The constraint at stage 1 is not leads, it's clarity. Because when you are clear, you don't need motivation, you need execution. But nobody gave you a roadmap. Nobody showed you what a productive day should look like. Nobody helped you define some clear goals and a concrete plan to actually hit those goals. So you try to compensate with effort, more hours, more trying shiny new things that you hear about, right? More random activity. But random activity doesn't create momentum, much less any predictability. At stage 1, the real game is becoming the kind of person who can win in this industry. That means mastering your mindset, setting real goals, not vague hopes and dreams. Okay, because here's the X factor in stage 1. Your environment. You will rise or fall to the standard of the room that you're in. If the room is average, you normalize average. If the room is high performance, you rise to it. So put yourself in a room where production is normal, growth is expected, and you're constantly pushed to develop your skills. Now, all of a sudden, you're compressing the time it takes to hit your goals. One of the biggest mistakes that agents make at this stage is following the herd, taking advice from people you wouldn't actually trade places with. Now, look, I can empathize with those people wanting to help you. I always assume positive intent, but if you take advice from agents who are struggling, that is what you are now modeling. At stage 1, you don't need more opinions, you need better inputs. I'm talking personalized training and mentorship. Ideally from people who have already built what you're trying to build and are willing and able to roll out the red carpet for you. I cannot stress enough how important it is to put yourself in an environment where you are following the right people. You have to find the right mentorship if you want to be successful in real estate. And you graduate stage 1 the moment you stop hoping this works. You stop saying, yeah, I'm trying this real estate thing. And you start saying, yeah, this is what I do. You've established yourself as the go-to real estate person in your sphere. Your friends and family see you as the legitimate market expert. You have clearly defined goals and a strong desire to achieve them, right? You have a plan that you believe in and are supremely confident that you can execute on. And you're exuding confidence now. Not because you've made millions yet, okay? But because you know what you're doing every day to move forward. You're not lost anymore. That's when you unlock stage 2. And stage 2 comes with a completely different problem. So let's get into it. And drop the number 1 in the comments if you're in this first stage, okay? No shame about it. And if anyone puts anything hateful in the comments, I will block them immediately. You have my word. We are building a hell of a community here, okay? Every great operator once started in this stage, okay? And so stage 2 is the seeker, all right? You're still solo, but now you're doing between 15 and 25 transactions a year. And from the outside, you look like you're doing pretty well. On the inside, though, it feels like quicksand. The more you struggle, the harder you push. The harder you push, the more exhausted you get. And somehow you're still stuck in the same place, right? You've proven you're willing to do the work. You might be working a FSBO or an expired strategy. Maybe you've spent some money on marketing. Some of it worked, a lot of it didn't. Your income, inconsistent. One month you're on top of the world, and then the next month it feels like you're right back under pressure. And if we're being honest, your confidence is shaky. You're sick of feeling stuck. You feel like you should be further along by now, especially when you see other agents passing you. And the hardest part is you're capable of more. You just can't seem to break through. Well, here's what's really happening at stage 2. Okay. You figured out how to create opportunities, but you haven't mastered how to consistently win them. You can get in the room, you just can't consistently walk out with the contract. This stage is about mastering one thing. Getting into meaningful conversations about real estate, turning those conversations into appointments, turning those appointments into signed agreements, and then turning those agreements into closings. That's it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're stuck at stage 2, I can almost guarantee you one thing. You haven't been fully trained. Not, I watched a few YouTube videos or, my broker gave me a script. I'm talking fully trained. You either have the strong people skills and sales skills or you do not. And this is the stage where that becomes painfully obvious. And you have to embrace that because now you're getting in front of more opportunities. But when you're face to face or on the phone, can you consistently win? When a seller says, "Why should I list with you?" Do you have an answer that makes them lean in? When a buyer says, I'm just looking, can you keep them engaged and move them forward? When someone objects on your commission, do you lead the conversation or do you start defending yourself? And a lot of agents at this stage start blaming the leads, oh, these Zillow leads are trash. These Facebook leads don't convert. Well, was it the lead or was it the fact that you didn't have the skill to lead the conversation? Because one of my friends, Dan in Florida, he recently had a lead tell him to F off the first time he called. Most agents would have hung up. Well, he didn't. His response was actually brilliant. And 3 weeks ago, that same person closed on a $450,000 property with him. That's not luck. That's skill. And the good news is skills can be learned. You want to be trained like you are disarming a bomb, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it like this. If you were disarming a bomb, would you want to be partly trained or fully trained? Would you want to be guessing between the red wire or the blue? No. You would know exactly what to do because you mastered your craft. You were prepared. It's the same thing in real estate. You either control the conversation or the lead sells you on why they're going to go in a different direction, right? And here's where most agents stall out. They don't have a differentiated value proposition and they default to, well, I work really hard and I care about my client. That's not a competitive advantage. Those are table stakes. Okay, that's a commodity. You have to craft a clear, differentiated value proposition. Can you confidently articulate why someone should hire you over every other agent in your market? Or do you just kind of hope that they end up choosing you? Warren Buffett says 50% of your success is your ability to articulate your durable competitive advantage. Why someone should do business with you over all alternatives. I have a proven repeatable system backed by market research to sell your home for up to 18% more than the methods used by traditional real estate agents. Would you like me to show you how that works? At stage 2, you have to be able to clearly articulate why your process, your system, why your approach produces a better outcome and do it with certainty. Now, here's the dangerous part about stage 2. You've tasted a little success. You've closed enough deals to know that this is real. You might even be making more money than you've ever made before, and that's dangerous because you can get comfortable here. And if this is where you want to stay, that's fine. But a lot of real talent ends up like a potted plant at stage 2. You're alive, you might be growing a little bit, but your roots have nowhere to go. And if you're stuck here, the biggest mistake is almost always one of two things. You stopped investing in your skills, or you're diverting your attention and energy into chasing shiny objects instead of mastering the fundamentals. You might have been burned by a bad lead source or a bad coach, and naturally you go on defense, right? But you see, the seeker who breaks through, they do something different. They seek answers. They double down on developing their skills. They become a continuous learner. They seek environments where they get a little bit better every day. Because the X factor at stage 2 is simple. Look, stage 1 was about generating opportunities. Stage 2 is about winning them. You graduate from stage 2 when you can confidently set appointments, get agreements signed, handle objections without flinching. Now you're closing with consistency without feeling like you got a little bit lucky. And once that happens, you unlock stage 3. And stage 3 introduces an entirely different kind of problem. Because up until now, your income has been 100% transactional, 100% dependent on your effort. If you stop working, everything stops. Stage 3 is where that starts to change, because for the first time, we're going to start talking about leverage. So let's talk about that one next. All right. And by the way, if we haven't met yet, my name is Jimmy Webb Jr. I'm a real estate agent who's been focused on direct response digital marketing strategies for many years now. So if you're looking for proven strategies to attract more leads, not chase them, close more deals and scale your team, I'd love for you to join the community here, and I'll let you take care of the buttons down there. I think you know what to do. If you feel like I've deserved a like, well, that's what tells me to keep making stuff like this. So anyway, let's get back to work. Stage 3 is what we call the growers. You're doing somewhere between 26 and 48 transactions a year, and you're not guessing anymore. You can win face to face. You can handle objections. You know how to close. And for the first time, you probably have some help here, okay? Maybe a transaction coordinator who is paid per transaction, maybe a VA, a virtual assistant, maybe one full-time admin person, someone to do the heavy lifting in terms of the paperwork and the things that are low dollar producing activities, okay? Ideally, you have somebody, right? If you don't, you're probably working much harder than you should. And you need to start thinking about getting some leverage. But you've taken the leap at this point. And here's the truth about stage 3. It feels like a roller coaster. 1 month, you feel unstoppable. The next month, you're staring at your pipeline, wondering what happened. The business is coming in waves. And the hardest part is you still don't fully control where your next client is going to come from. Referrals are coming, past clients may resurface, your sphere might send someone your way, but you can't point to a dial and say, okay, if I turn this up, I get 2 more listings next month. And that lack of predictability, that is the pain of stage 3. You're making good money. Again, maybe the most you've ever made, but it's not predictable. It's not scalable because there's no leverage, right? At stage 3, the problem is no longer skill, it's structure. You are stuck in the cycle of create the sale, service the sale, create the sale, service the sale, and repeat, right? And when you're servicing sales, well, the creation of those opportunities slows down and the whole machine slows down. Here's the shift that has to happen. You must learn how to profitably invest funds to acquire clients. Not hope, not referrals, not, oh, maybe something comes in this week. I'm talking predictable marketing paired with a repeatable sales process that can turn a complete stranger into a client that you mastered in stage 2. But if you can't invest a dime into marketing and reliably get $1 back, you will stay here. And this is where a lot of agents get frustrated. Because look, there are a lot of self-proclaimed gurus out there who will take your money and make all sorts of promises. Oftentimes those promises don't end up being kept and you feel burned. So you pull back, you go on defense. But the real issue usually wasn't the tool. It's that there wasn't a clear, comprehensive strategy behind it. Right? And more so, I would say there weren't clear expectations with the math. right? You didn't ask what the expected cost to acquire a customer was before you started. And so eventually the frustration gets loud enough that you realize you don't need another tool, you need clarity. And that's usually where coaching enters the picture, right? And what a coach is going to do is teach you some version of a functional org chart, right? Your name is going to be in every box when you're solo. But when you make your first hire, now you're deciding what things are you going to take off of your plate. So you start to get really clear on what things you change the outcome on. Stage 3 is about becoming obsessed with one thing, your HLAs, your high leverage activities, AKA the things that are revenue generating, okay? We have a document that we refer to as the 9 box that lists all the functions in a real estate business arranged from low value to high value and low leverage to high leverage. And what you'll realize for someone who has the ambition to do really well, you'll never make $1 million a year doing $10 an hour work. It's mathematically impossible. You have to be doing $500 an hour work. So you shouldn't be putting a sign in the yard. You can hire that stuff out so that you can focus on the things that actually change revenue and start removing everything else from your plate. This is why your first real hire becomes critical. And it's a little bit scary, right? When you hire that first admin, you feel exposed. You feel responsible. You feel the pressure of payroll. But once you experience life with leverage, you will never want to go back, right? Because the goal at stage 3 is simple. Free yourself up to focus on the only 2 things that matter: prospecting and appointments. And here's the strategic mistake that stalls almost everyone here. They focus too much on buyers, but buyers don't create leverage. Listings do. There are not enough hours in the day to scale the model of carting around buyers, right? Stage 3 requires a listing strategy, a solid, predictable listing source, producing 1 or 2 listings every month. That's the breakthrough. Because once listings become consistent, your income stabilizes, your confidence stabilizes, and so does your time, right? You move from riding the wave to building the engine. And when you can win face-to-face, consistently generate listings, and operate through an assistant, you've crossed into control. Stage 2 was about proving you could sell. Stage 3 is about proving you can build a business. And that sets the stage for stage 4. Because stage 4 is where we stop talking about you doing more and start talking about other people producing. And that's an entirely different game. All right, so let's go there next. All right, before we go there, I'm sure I've talked to the majority of agents by now, so I'm curious. Comment below the number of the stage you are in, along with the one word to describe how this business feels like to you right now. And I will be reading every single comment, okay? Might even do some micro coaching down there, we'll see. And if you know someone who needs to hear what we're talking about today, be a good friend and hit the share button down there, and let's see if we can't change some lives together here. All right, back to work. So stage 4, this is what I call the hustler stage. You're doing somewhere between 49 and 80 transactions a year. You've got 2, maybe 3 or 4 people around you now, and somehow it still feels like you're doing all the work. You're busy from the moment you wake up until your head hits the pillow. You're answering emails, managing inspections, handling appraisal issues, jumping into contract questions, right? You might physically be at dinner, but you're not present. I had someone schedule a strategy call with me last week, and they didn't follow the process, showed up late, and he asked me at the very beginning, he's like, hey, just give me the Cliff Notes version. And I asked him, how many areas of your life are you approaching that way right now? Because at the hustler stage, it feels like a treadmill set to 10 miles an hour. Now, here's the important part. The problem at this stage is lack of systems and leverage. There is so much $10 an hour work on your plate, and you're the $500 an hour person doing it. You built the engine in stage 3, and now the engine is running, but it's redlining, okay? And you're outrunning your capacity. And this is where most agents make the biggest mistake of their career. They hire buyer agents too soon instead of hiring leverage. they hire the commission split, right? Except there is so much administrative work that you can delegate before you ever give away half of your commission to another agent. I'm talking about a transaction coordinator or maybe a listing manager, possibly an inside sales agent here, an ISA, to make the calls and protect your prospecting consistency, right? All of that can come off your plate. And here's the deeper issue that most people don't think about. When you hand off a client relationship too early, you don't just lose that transaction. You lose the lifetime value of that customer. You lose the repeat business, the referrals. You lose the brand authority. And if that agent ever leaves your team, they don't just leave, they take those relationships with them. So at this stage, the goal is not more agents. The goal is a couple more admin hires so that you can spend your time where the money is actually made, face to face with clients, on the phone with qualified and motivated prospects, right? In high leverage conversations. Now, let's talk about something else that matters here. Your transaction mix, okay? At this stage, at a minimum, you should be at 50% listings, minimum. And as you move toward the top of this stage, it should really look more like 60-40 or even 70-30 listings, okay? Because sellers create leverage. Buyers consume more of our time, right? And if you're heavy on buyers doing 60 or 70 transactions a year, you didn't build a business, you built a time trap. Now, there's one more danger here. You got to this stage because you made the calls. You prospected, you did the high leverage activities, but now you're so busy handling deals that you stop doing the things that created the deals. That's where the roller coaster comes back. Not because your marketing stopped working, but because you got too busy to feed it consistently. Okay, so this stage is about two skills: time management and delegation. Not working harder, okay, but working up the ladder, if you will. Okay, so if stage 3 proved you could build structure, stage 4 is where you prove you can protect your time. And if you get this right, you don't just grow, you create space. And that space is what allows you to step into the next stage. All right. Speaking of space, let's take a quick breather here. We're halfway there, ladies and gentlemen. 4 stages down, 4 to go. By the way, I will be referencing this video in future content. I can guarantee you that. So if you haven't saved this video yet, take a quick moment to hit the save button down there so you can easily reference back to this. All right. So stage 5, the entrepreneur. This is where the rubber really meets the road. All right. You're doing somewhere between 80 and 160 transactions a year. You've got 4 to maybe 9 people on your team. Your ISA is fully trained, handling the prospecting. You are no longer making those calls. You are primarily face-to-face on listing appointments. You've got some agents handling the buy side, and those systems are either working or they're not, but revenue is up. The business is rocking, and you're making some real money here, okay? But it feels turbulent, right? Like whitewater rafting. Right? The current's strong, the boat's moving back and forth, and you're constantly adjusting to keep it upright. Okay? Here's what's different now. You're no longer being paid just for what you produce. You're being paid for what you produce through others. And that's a completely different skill set. Stage 4 was about protecting your time. Stage 5 is about leading people. And most of us weren't trained for that. Okay? The personality that gets many agents to 80 transactions is usually not process oriented, right? Like you're driven, you're a visionary, you're focused on sales, right? But now the business demands some real systems, okay? You need hiring systems, onboarding processes, a rhythm of team communication, right? Clear expectations and defined roles for those people. And this is where you develop your core values as decision filters to intentionally craft the culture that you want. Okay. Most agents stall because they lack a decision-making framework. So, they look for coaching. But look, if there is no standard procedure being taught, you've wasted money on that coach. This is where KPIs and real business principles are what move the needle the most. Okay. And if you don't install that structure, you feel the chaos. And here's the truth. If you're stuck at this stage, it's usually not because revenue is down, it's because people problems are up. You don't have a system for hiring the right person. So you end up managing conflict, dealing with drama, and the most dangerous person on your team right now is the high producer who violates the culture, the one nobody likes, right? But they make money. So you justify keeping them around. But that person is a cancer, quietly eroding your culture. That is what is called leadership tension. If you keep them, you build silent resentment across the team. If you fire them, you feel like you're going to lose revenue. And this is where leadership is forged. Because at this level, transactions don't matter nearly as much as profit margin. Okay. You can do 120 deals and make less money than you did at 80. And you start to feel your ego taking over because you want so badly to say, oh, we did 120, whatever it is, deals, while only you and your mind finished the rest of that sentence in silence. But we made less money. If compensation is not structured properly, if expenses start to creep up, if your marketing is not scalable, this is where entrepreneurs are made or exposed. Stage 5 forces you to stop thinking like a top producer and start thinking like a business owner. This is also where brand presence becomes critical because you're no longer just marketing homes, okay? You're marketing your team, your culture, your standards, your leadership. Brand becomes recruiting leverage, retention leverage, and it becomes pricing leverage too. And if you get this right, you build something that doesn't depend on you being the best salesperson in the room. But, here's the reality that most people don't see. As Jim Rohn said, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. There is a tremendous amount of learning that has to happen in order to build a business at this level. It's about who you're going to become, right? Because you ain't born here. That's for sure. Okay. So to move through stage 5, you don't just need better systems. You need to become a better leader, a better decision maker, a better strategist. Okay. The best strategist always wins. Stage 4 proves you can protect your time. Stage 5 proves you can build something that works without you. And that is the bridge to the next stage, which is stage 6, the leader. So now you're doing 160 to 300 transactions. Okay. You got 9 to 12 people on the team. You're clearing some serious income. Okay. You are in rare company here. And from the outside, you look like you've made it, but internally, you're still working 60 hours a week. You may not be drowning anymore like stage 5. You got out of the whitewater, but now you're in the whirlwind. Okay. And if we were off of YouTube, we'd probably use a different word for that. But we're going to keep this a clean edit here. Okay. But look, you're not trying to survive anymore. You're trying to control chaos because this stage is intense, right? You're managing sales. You're still getting listings. You're recruiting, you're handling culture, you're solving problems. And when a key person leaves, man, that hurts. Maybe you've already lost a top agent. Maybe an operations hire didn't work out. Maybe someone you thought would be with you forever isn't. And now you realize this business rests on your shoulders. This is where leadership stops being optional and it becomes your primary job. At this stage, raw hustle does not fix your problems. Leadership and management principles have to be refined. The main keys here are rhythm and communication, right? You must create a cadence, huddles, consistent one-on-ones, clear tracking and reporting, right? Documented SOPs, defined expectations, because there's not enough of you to go around anymore. If everything still funnels back to you, you don't have leaders, you have helpers, and helpers create bottlenecks. This is the stage where you stop building a sales team and you start building a miniature executive leadership team, okay? Departmental leaders, People who own sales, operations, recruiting, the client experience, right? And here's one of the biggest lessons in stage 6. You have to give people real ownership, okay? Not fake ownership. I'm talking real ownership. That means autonomy. That means your transaction coordinator can solve a client problem without asking you, and you trust their judgment 100%. Okay, that means someone can make a financial decision to protect the brand without it landing on your desk. And when you do that, two things happen. Number one, it's terrifying, okay? And number two, they're usually better at it than you. That's the shift, okay? You move from being the best producer to developing leaders who outperform you in that lane. The pains at this stage are very real, okay? Hiring talent, losing talent, spending a lot of money, maybe juggling multiple technologies, right? Lead conversion at scale. It can feel overwhelming, right? It feels like a constant whirlwind. But the X factor here is developing those departmental leaders. If you can elevate 2 or 3 key people into true ownership roles, everything changes. The goal of stage 6 is simple. You've hired a key operations leader. You've put a listing agent in place, and you're buying back your time to focus on leading and developing people. Because the next stage, you are no longer the center of production. You are the architect, and very few people make that shift cleanly. Most either stay stuck here or eventually burn out. Okay, so let's talk about stage 7. Now we're down to the final 2 here, all right? Stage 7 is the visionary. You're doing over 300 transactions. You've got 12 or more people on the team now. Serious volume, okay? Serious revenue. And from the outside, you are the example. But internally, something shifts. Okay, you've accomplished most of the goals that you had for real estate. And now you're being pulled towards something bigger, a higher purpose. You know, it's not about proving you can sell anymore. It's about impact, legacy, right? And success alone isn't satisfying you the way it used to. And here's the tension. You want out of production, not because you can't do it, but because there are other things in your life that matter more now. You know, expanding the business, developing leaders, building something that outlives you, maybe even things outside of real estate, right? But every time you try to step out, the math doesn't work. The comp structure doesn't hold. You know, an agent underperforms, margins start to shrink, and you get pulled right back into production. It's like getting released from jail for the weekend only to be told you have to report back Monday morning, right? It's maddening, right? This stage feels like a tar pit, okay? You're successful, but you're stuck. The grind of constantly replacing low producing agent is exhausting. And you start questioning, you know, why don't they see the value? Why does it always fall back on me? You know, why can't this thing run without me? Here's the hard truth of stage 7. It's not a hustle problem. It's not even a leadership problem. It's a business model problem. Most agents at this level are not running clean P&Ls. You don't truly understand the unit economics, the contribution margin, what it actually costs to acquire a client, what they can afford to pay in splits, understanding what happens mathematically when they remove themselves from production. So when you step out, you're guessing, and guessing at this level is expensive. I've seen it firsthand. You know, my buddy Jay stepped out of production, got pulled back in, you know, eventually stepped out again, thought he had it this time. Yeah, got pulled back in again, twice. That will humble you. And, you know, it wasn't effort. It wasn't talent. It was the structure. You know, the shift came when the financial model got rebuilt correctly. And a book that played a big role in that was Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits by Greg Crabtree. Okay, the principle is simple. You win before you start. You do the math first. You understand your salary. You understand profit. You understand what the business can support. And you build a model that works without you. Then you execute it. And, you know, here's what's wild about stage 7. There's usually a whirlwind of cash in the business that's not being capitalized on. You know, missed revenue streams, poorly optimized splits, unused leverage, inefficient spend. That's a big one. You know, 'cause when we work with people at this level, it's like walking into a candy store full of untapped leverage because the opportunity is massive. Okay. The X factor here is the right business model. If the model is flawed, no amount of leadership fixes it. But if the model is sound, freedom becomes possible. The goal of stage 7 is clear. You understand your financial model deeply. You've built a highly profitable, debt-free business. It generates profit without your involvement in daily production, and you pay yourself intentionally, okay? Either through salary or profit distributions. And now you are no longer trying to escape production. You have engineered your exit properly because Stage 8 isn't about production. It's about freedom. And very few people ever build a model that actually gets them there. Most just build a bigger job. Okay. So stage 8 is the icon. Similar to stage 7 in terms of numbers, but internally, everything is different because you are no longer trying to escape the business. You've already engineered that. You have the right model. You understand your numbers. The business is running profitably. It generates income whether you sell a home or not. And you pay yourself intentionally. And for the first time, you don't feel pulled back into production. You feel free. That's why stage 8 doesn't feel like a tar pit. It feels like freedom. You know, if you remember back to stage 1, you were praying for your phone to ring, right? In stage 8, you are living your life by strategy. And here's what's important. Freedom is doing only what's aligned. At this level, the pain that defined the earlier stages is gone. You're not stressed about splits. You're not worried about margins. You're not scrambling to replace agents, right? You're not putting out fires every day. You've built something stable. And now the question is, what do you want your life to stand for? Stage 8 is where ego dies. You're no longer trying to prove that you're the best agent in the market. You're focused on building wealth intelligently, creating opportunity for key people, right? Adding massive value to others, coaching and developing leaders, and still growing personally, right? You say no to opportunities that don't align. You focus on long-term wealth instead of short-term commissions. You think in decades now, not quarters. And your systems shift too, right? Now it's content creation, agent attraction, financial oversight, opportunity exploration, right? You become a magnet. The X factor here is creating and communicating opportunity for other people. You see, icons don't just build businesses, they build platforms. They build leaders. They build wealth vehicles. They create space for others to win. And here's the truth. There is no pain at this level. Not because life is perfect or anything, but because you designed the model correctly. You are operating in alignment. Your business supports your purpose, not the other way around. The goal of stage 8, living your life's purpose, generating passive income, building wealth, and growing personally, and contributing at a level that actually matters. This is where real estate stops being the thing you do and becomes the vehicle that funded who you become. Very few people make it here. Not because they can't sell, not because they can't lead, but because they never fix the model and they never evolve their identity. Stage 8 is not about more transactions. It's about transcendence. And here's what's crazy, right? Stage 1 and stage 8 look nothing alike on paper, but they do have something in common. In stage 1, you were uncertain. You didn't know what to do. You were overwhelmed. You were trying to survive, right? But you were hungry. You were willing to learn. You were willing to grow. Stage 8 brings you back to that same posture. Except now, you're not hungry because you're broke. You're hungry because you're called. You're not trying to survive. You're trying to serve now. The agent in stage 1 says, how do I get clients? The icon in stage 8 is asking, how do I create opportunity for others? Same drive, just a different dimension. If you are committed to building toward this level of the business, comment the word icon. And if you're serious about identifying your stage and building the right model for it, there's a link below to book a strategy call. And just know that those calls are for agents ready to do the work. All right. Now, here's the real question. What stage are you in? Not the stage you want to be in. Okay. Not the stage you pretend to be in. The one you're actually operating in right now. Because every stage requires something different. And if you apply stage 1 strategies to stage 4, you will struggle. The reason most agents feel stuck is they're solving the wrong problem for the stage that they're in. So here's what I'd encourage you to do. Identify your stage and be honest about it. Then commit to mastering that level before trying to skip ahead. Okay? Because this isn't about transactions. It's about evolution. And the agents who understand the stage that they're in, they move faster. And so if this framework helped you, will you share it with another agent who needs clarity? And drop your number one top takeaway in the comments. I read every single one, and I might even do some micro coaching down there for a lucky few. We'll see. All right. But ladies and gentlemen, the journey from solopreneur to icon, it isn't about luck. It's about intentional growth. And now you have the roadmap. Remember, the stage you're in is not your identity. It's your assignment. Maybe I'll see you back on this video in the future, but until then, I hope you take action.